Today's video, we're going to be checking out the Hot Toys release of Alien Ellen Ripley 1/6 scale collectible figure. Your Hot Toys product code for Ellen Ripley here is MMS366. The 6-scale figure release of Ellen stands approximately 11.5 inches tall and depicts the character first introduced to audiences in 1979 with the original smash hit thriller Alien. This is the lone survivor, or should I say one of two survivors, of the original crew of the commercial starship Nostromo. Ripley gets herself a rather elaborate looking display base. It actually appears to be the same display base that we got ourselves with the Hot Toys Aliens Warrior, which I've already had a look at on this channel. It seems to be the same sort of design. Of course, one thing changed is the front placard, in which now Ripley is on the front here. It's got some really nice detail to it, and it's not an overly large base either, so this is something I could have probably about 2 or 3 of these in my 1D12 shelf. A lot of times when you get display stands that are super large, it basically then limits the number of figures that you want to have in the one display. Of course, I could go without the display stand, but the display stand looks so good, I would want to definitely include it with her display. For her outfit, Ripley gets herself one of the crew Nostromo jumpsuits. Basically has a 1 zipper closure on the front and then a series of smaller zippers making up the pockets in the top area and around the thigh area as well. None of these zippers appear to be functioning. They're basically just there for show, but she does have functioning zippers now down to the bottom area where the closure is on her legs, where you can zip this a little more closed. I prefer to have it a little bit more relaxed myself. And then down below, she's got a pair of white sneakers here. Some really nice sculpting on the sneakers, even on the undersides, where it looks like they've given a slight dirt to it as well, so it doesn't look like it's a pristine-looking sneaker. It's not one of the better lace sculpts for a Hot Toys release. Certainly have seen a lot better, and I've seen better ones from, say, the likes of 3-0. They've really impressed me with sculpted shoes, and more importantly, the fact that they include real laces. But as it is, they're not terrible, and I do appreciate that they put finer little details, such as the stitch work on the side, and the little looplets here, in which the laces are fed through. Underneath the crew suit, Ripley's got herself a slight pinkish, almost off-white shirt, and then underneath that, she's got herself a green olive-colored t-shirt. I wouldn't really entertain the idea of trying to remove this. I don't know how far down this outfit reaches. I feel as if it's basically just like a fabric outfit to about here. I don't think she actually has it all the way up onto her sleeves. So I really, again, wouldn't want to take it completely off. I mean, she looks like this throughout the course of the movie. I wouldn't be wanting to take this off at all. Some nice detailing, though, here on the crew's uniform. It's got some indicating patches here on the front, and then on the side she has the USCSS Nostromo 180286. Discussing Ellen Ripley's face sculpt, it is quite good. Now, if you were lucky enough to have seen the early convention shots of Ellen Ripley, you'll know that the 6-scale figure release here of her was initially going to be slated with a real doll hair. And if you've seen the video or seen images of the original released Ellen or plans of what she was going to look like, I think this going the route of sculpted hair, which is a much smarter route on the part of Hot Toys. I'm glad that they didn't go real doll hair, because to be all honest, whatever great head sculpt that Ripley would have had, I think would have been, in all honesty, would have been ruined by using doll hair. Some figures, I think, can get away with using the rooted hair, for example, like the Wonder Woman and the Scarlet Witch, for example. Black Widow was also a good example. But I think when you've got very fine accent areas to the hair, such as Ripley, for example. Ripley has curls in her hair. You really could not have pulled this off, I think, with rooted hair. Sculpted hair in this instance works much better, And I'm glad that they ended up changing their mind and going the route of sculpted hair rather than rooted. The hair has a slight sheen to it, but otherwise it's a somewhat more darker matte black, and I think it works quite well for the figure. And head sculpt wise, I'm very impressed with how this one turned out. It looks like they have tweaked it since their initial release images of Ripley. And I think really from all angles, it does look like her. I was a little weary of the fact that they've left the mouth open, slightly showing a little bit of the teeth rather than having her mouth completely shut. But I think adding just a little bit of that gap in between the lips adds a certain extra little bit of life, I think, to her expression. Equally so, I think the skin pigmentation is also quite good, where it just has a slight bit of rosiness around the cheek area. Otherwise, it's somewhat more of a darker skin tone, which here works perfectly on Ripley. The eyes are nicely done with a slight slickness across the eyeballs, again giving a little bit of life. And the eyebrows are much more subtler than I initially thought that they were going to be. I thought they were going to be a little bit more profound. But I think, again, everything comes together very nicely on this particular 6-scale figure release of Ellen Ripley. I would not say it's one of Hot Toys' best, but for this year, 2017, it's definitely one of their better ones. Yes, I don't really think there's much denying the fact that that looks like Ellen Ripley. Again, the mouth part is about the only thing I'm still a little apprehensive about, but I think it's warming up to me more than what it did when I first took it out of packaging. Like, from there, I think it looks like her. When you start looking at the mouth looks jarring at first, but you're not going to necessarily be looking at the figure this close anyways. I'm just doing this for the sake of this review. From a distance, actually, I think it works better than looking at it really, really close like what we are doing right now. Again, skin pigmentation is good. The skin tone is good. The eye sculpt is nice. The nose is, I think, as accurate as it should be. And again, I'm really thinking that the hair is a much better route that they went the sculpted rather than the rooted hair. Now, looking at one of her accessories, this would be parts of the problem, I think, with this particular Ellen. Well, I think Ellen is good and does look like Ellen Ripley from the movie. I don't really know what's happened to Jones here. Jonesy, I think, has come across poorly. I did an initial unboxing of Ellen Ripley, and when I first looked at Jonesy, I took him out, and I really had lukewarm, if not a rather cold reception towards how he ended up coming across with the sculpt. Now, physically looking at him in a more in-depth review, I can say that my feelings towards Jonesy has not changed one bit. I don't know what's happened to him, but I think they've really missed the mark when it comes to Jonesy. Not only is he staction, you can't do anything with him. So, for example, if we take his carrier here, that one of the other accessories that comes included with her, because you can't rotate the head any bit forward, when you are putting the cat into its carrier, the cat is always looking this way. It's not looking forward, which I think really takes away from the purpose of wanting to carry it around in the carrier, that the cat should have had at the very least, it should have had some posability in the head. But I don't even know where to start on this. They didn't flock the hair, which I think they should have. They should have added some sense that this looked like real fur. The sculpting comes across again like a PVC cat. If you ever go into like one of those educational stores, when you buy like one of those little PVC animals, this at the very least looks like that. It might even look even worse than some of those PVC animals that you see in stores. I don't really understand why the mouth seems like it's a separate piece than everything else. It's almost as if they decided at the last minute, let's have Jones's mouth open, and they simply added it as a new part to the sculpt, because it really doesn't make any logical sense why that mouth doesn't have a hinge. It doesn't open and close. It doesn't make any sense to me why that is a separate piece completely. And let's discuss the eyes. The eyes is really the one deal breaker, if anything could be said. You could criticize the sculpt of Jonesy. You could say, well, it doesn't really look like him from the movie. The paint might seem a little bit off, but all of that could be somewhat passable if they had not painted the eyes completely black. Don't know why they did this, but the eyes are completely black. It looks like more like a demon cat or one of those alien species from X-Files, where they were like this ooze kind of black goo creature. That's what it kind of reminds me of when I'm looking at it. The eyes are way off, and I really would have to say there's no positiveness at all to poor Jones. Of one of the other survivors of the Nostromo, which I alluded to at the beginning of this review, 2 survivors of Nostromo, one is done really well, and poor Jonesy, who survives all the way through, from what we can imagine, and dies of old age, suffers the worst. I think he is one of the worst animal, I can't even think if there's other animal 6-scale figure accessories, but if there are, I would probably say he is one of the worst sculpts that I would expect to get for a Hot Toys 6-scale figure release. This is almost, well, I'm going to say, this is embarrassing. Alright, so let's talk about the cat carrier, even though we've spent so much time talking about Jonesy. The cat carrier is nice, and it does look like it does in the movie. You've got a little bit of the clear plastic on the front, as well as the top. The closure here just snaps shut, and it does lock into place, so if you want to have Ripley holding it in her hand, you can accommodate that. You don't have to worry about the handle coming loose. But it just detaches like so. Some nice detailing on the interior of the cat carrier. It looks like it is padded, but it is just sculpted plastic. And you've got some vents, breathing vents on the back. And I'm guessing some sort of regulator, some oxygen regulator or something like that on the side, some controls. There's the other side there. It's got some nice coloring. It's got a nice little bit of wear to it, so it doesn't look like it's brand new. It looks good. I wish Jonesy looked half as good as the carrier. And again, you just kind of lay him in there. But unfortunately, he's always going to be looking at the side of the carrier. That's how you reward one of the other survivors of the Nostromo. You have them relegated to this. Some other accessories that come included with Ripley, one of which I've already put onto her hand. And see if the camera can get it. There's a little wristwatch, 2-faced wristwatch. The band is, well, the band is black, but the underneath of the controls are an orange. And then you've got the actual watch faces on top of that. They really have not given any sort of paint to it, instead just relying on the black to get it across. Kind of wish that there would be some additional coloring in there. Would have to go back and watch Alien again. Maybe it doesn't really have a whole lot of color in there, but I feel like they could have done something a little bit extra to it. But I've already gone ahead and just attached it to her wrist. Simply just taking the hand off, sliding this onto the forearm, and then just replacing the hand. Continuing to look at her accessories, she also comes with the tracking device. A little bit more cruder than some of the tracking devices we would then see in the sequel Aliens. It's got your little screen up at the top there, some nice controls painted in there, given again a very dingy, darker, kind of dirtied look to it, which I quite like. It matches almost the same sort of color as the cat carrier, because you could imagine that on the Nostromo they probably have, manufactured tools and stuff at their disposal. Cat carriers and tracking devices and stuff would all stay somewhat consistent color-wise to itself, or to each other. Little knobs and controls there. Again, it looks quite good. She can hold it very easily. Some tubes and stuff on the sides. This is a little bit of a softer tube, and that's running down this side here. Then, of course, probably what most collectors will be displaying her with, she also comes with her flamethrower, or torch. Again, it's got a more basic, almost primitive-looking design to what we would then see in the Aliens sequel. As you see, it's got the tanks on the undercarriage here, one being the red, one being the white. Not really much in the way of paint. It kind of keeps to a very, very singular color, that being of a cream. But then they've gone in and dirtied it up by adding some additional browns and stuff to it. Even like the handles look like hands have been using them, and the handles have gotten dirtier in their, of course, the time of these being used. A little bit of copper on the end here, and the rope is adjustable, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot of extra clearance. So you can, for example, fit it over her arm and her head. but it's not the easiest to do so. If you put it just simply on her shoulder, it's not so bad, but if you want to drape it across, say, to the other shoulder, it would then involve taking her head off to do so, because it just doesn't seem long enough. I mean, I can't complain necessarily about that, because in all honesty, I wouldn't want it any bit longer, because then it would drape too far down. So if you do want to, say, drape it over her shoulder, for example, you would want to then take the head off completely and then just drape it over such, and then just replace it with the head over top of that. The torch, or the flamethrower, is probably going to be how I end up displaying the figure, because I think it's such an iconic look, having Ripley walking down the corridors of course, the Nostromo, hunting down or trying to defend herself at the very least against the one xenomorph that has made its way on board. Ripley also gets herself a bunch of extra pegs. So if, for example, you take your hands out, not your hands, her hands, and you've got the pegs that want to stay in the sockets, you can just replace them. Or again, if you want to end up breaking any one of those pegs, you can just replace them out. One of the other things that Hot Toys did include as well is some extra buttons. Not necessarily for her jumpsuit, but the buttons running down the inside of her shirt here. So if any of those come off, they give you what looks to be 2 extra buttons then you can replace here. And I'm guessing they're just adhesive. You would just simply stick them on. Lastly, she gets a series of interchangeable hands. The hands, to go through them, she has a pair of closed fists. I know, yawn, a little bit boring. She also comes with a pair of relaxed palms, one of which I've already got attached to the one socket. The other hand would just go right here. And then the third hand is the trigger hand for holding the blowtorch or the flamethrower. And there's a little finger here. I say a little finger like it's a feature, but the finger actually will fit over top of the handle. It's a little bit of a broader handle, mind you. Let me flip this around here. But there's the little trigger there that she can activate the torch from. Running through her posability, Ripley's head appears to be on a ball joint, but if we take the head off, it looks like there's a secondary ball joint in the base of her neck. And her neck, they've cased it in a soft rubber. I'll just go ahead and take the head on there. So you've got a full rotation. As it could probably be expected, when you rotate the head, because the hair sticks so far down, rotating heads sometimes, at times, will end up popping the head off inadvertently. So just be mindful of that when you are rotating the head. The arms hinge outward via universal joints. A forward and back gets a little on the tight side around the torso area here, just more importantly around the shoulder where the fabric starts bunching itself up here. We just roll up her sleeve, and just to show you, she has a double hinge on the elbow. Hinge and a secondary hinge, although this first hinge doesn't bend nearly as much as one would hope. I almost think that they'd move the joint a little further down so that the range of motion would actually be further down on the elbow and not further up, because it only seems like I can benefit from the one hinge rather than the 2 here. She has an upper torso ball joint, and she has a lower torso waist swivel. Her legs hinge outward at about that much, not that much greater than that. Forward and back on the leg. Oh, she's got a top swivel cut on the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. And then as for her feet, let me just move them up here. Not only did they put socks in, which was actually quite surprising, but of course you've got your ball joint in the foot, hinges back and forth, rotate all the way around, and it gives you also a slight ankle pivot as well. In final looks here, one of the things I forgot to mention during the course of this review was she comes with an extra hand as well, one of which that I've got currently holding the undercarriage of the blowtorch. I don't know why I left it off. I must have put it to the side of the desk when I was doing the review of her, and I completely left it off. So she actually does get a total of 6 hands rather than the 5 hands I mentioned during this review. And the hand that I've currently got now in the socket of the forearm makes more perfect sense for holding the flamethrower or the torch in her hand. As it goes for Ellen Ripley, this is just about exactly what I would want Hot Toys to have done with an Ellen Ripley figure, and I'm glad to think that there's a lot of level of progression that goes from initial toy show, toy convention images to what we will eventually get. I was super excited to see an Ellen Ripley being released by Hot Toys, but I really wasn't sure how I felt about rooted hair. It's nice to know that they would have gone back and corrected it and given us sculpted hair rather instead than the rooted hair. I think sculpted hair for characters such as Ripley makes much more sense than rooted hair. The accessories are good. I like that it would have included the tracker, of course the torch, and the display base, all of which make this basically a win-win figure. This is basically as perfect as of a figure as it could get, I think, for Ripley. And then we talk about Jones, and Jones being the one stumbling block on an otherwise perfect figure. As good as Ripley is, and as good as all the accessories that come with her are top-notch, I don't understand how Hot Toys could have dropped the ball when it came to a sculpt on Jonesy. A cat. And yet somehow, a cat is what ends up being the stumbling block on this figure. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination, because you may very well just display Ripley as what I'm doing right now. Jonesy may not even make your display, but it's disappointing the fact that for as good as they can get on a likeness of an actor or an actress, how they could miss such a mark when it comes to a cat is beyond me. The cat should have had maybe a little bit of flock fur to it, certainly could have had some articulation in the head, and I don't even know what they did with the eyes. The eyes on Jonesy are a train wreck. Still though, overlooking the fact of Jonesy, who technically is really only an accessory, Ripley is a home run hit. For fans of Aliens, you definitely will want to add this one to your collection. Today we're having a look at the Hot Toys. This was the Alien MMS 366, and this was the Ellen Ripley 1/6 scale collectible figure. If you guys haven't had a chance already to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so, as you'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos. If you'd also like to go back and check out some of the previous Hot Toy reviews that I've done, I've got a playlist that you can check out and basically watch anything I've done that's Hot Toy related, and it'll be there in the playlist section. Thanks for watching, as you always do, guys. Thanks for commenting down below. I always like reading new comments from you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.